Well, good morning and welcome back to Morning and NTV. My name is Idris Matu Segawa, and right about now we enter that segment that we call Take Note. But did you know that today is World Epilepsy Day? What do you know about epilepsy? We have Dr. Richard Idrio, pediatrician, and who is going to talk about this issue and more as we discuss this quite important, very important topic that so many people probably do not give attention on this day because we are concentrating on Valentine's. Doctor, good morning.
Good morning.
Just tell us about a little bit of what you do as a doctor, and for those people who might not be familiar with your particular profession.
No, Dr. Richard Idro is a pediatrician. So I see children, I care for children.
Yeah.
All forms of the child's well-being, illnesses in children, children's growth. But in addition, I am a specialist in brain disorders in children. So in addition to my basic pediatric training, I have trained in brain disorders of children. And epilepsy is one of the conditions, which is a brain disorder in children.
Doctor, what is epilepsy? How can you define it?
Epilepsy is one of the leading chronic brain disorders, chronic in terms of being a long-standing problem, in which the person who suffers epilepsy has a propensity to have recurrent fits or seizures. These individuals, all our brains have millions, billions of brain cells, and these brain cells communicate with each other using electrical activity.
Yeah.
Now, each brain cell can generate its own electrical activity and generate the activity, say, to tell this arm that bring food to my mouth. It can come from an area. And these electrical activities are well controlled. But in persons with epilepsy, there are sites in the brain which can generate an excessive discharge, like a short circuit in an electrical installation. And this occur without provocation or can occur with provocation and occur repeatedly and then manifests with the things which we see. So epilepsy is a condition in which the brain has and generates abnormal discharges and manifests either with jerking or with an abnormal behavior or with abnormal emotions and abnormal control in bodily activities.
When you say abnormal emotions, because I have seen some people who actually have epilepsy, and you talked about the jacking, and
Yes.
probably they tell us, make sure you hold the tongue, you put something in the tongue because they might bite it and cause even a worse situation.
A leading manifestation of a fit or epilepsy is the jerking, which we see and which many of us know of.
Yeah.
But epilepsy can also manifest in different ways. Our brain has regions which are specific for different things. For example, just above the ear, running up on either side, controls the face, controls the arm movements, controls the leg. Behind, controls vision. Somewhere in between, controls hearing. Somewhere in front here, we have a region which controls our relationship. How do you relate in deep somewhere inside is emotions, laughing, happiness.
Yeah.
Now, if this abnormal discharge arises in the area which affects like emotions, your epilepsy manifest with abnormal laughing. You start laughing out of the blue. Everybody wonders, there's nothing
what's going
funny.
on?
Yes. We have children in school who have usually 5 to 8 year olds. They just stop, stare for a few seconds, 20 seconds to a minute, and then resume. A teacher is teaching and saying 1 + 1 is equal to,
and they're just seated there.
2 + 2 is equal to, the child wakes up 4. Now, in between here, the child has lost everything because the abnormal discharge, the epileptic discharge is going on. So that is one manifestation. Another manifestation is just an abnormal jerk. Or they may have jerks like that. And some of them are so bad that the person can just fall down. A child just falls out of the blue, gets up, falls out of the blue many times. That's also a manifestation of epilepsy. Others, you may have the heads just drop. Then there are others in very young children, usually 3 months to about a year, where they have they do things like that. So there are many manifestations of epilepsy. The other big one where we see even people biting their tongue, that is what many of us in the community know, but it's much more than that.
Wow. Well, if you have just joined us, we are talking about epilepsy. And every second Monday of February is International Day of Epilepsy. And today doubles to be also Valentine's Day. But what makes the irony rich is that celebration in honor of patron saint of lovers, Saint Valentine, takes on greater meaning when you consider he's also the patron saint of epilepsy, a common neurological condition, as the doctor has been explaining, that causes seizures and affects nearly 50,000 to 900,000 of Uganda's population. Some accounts suggest St. Valentine's affiliation to the epileptic condition is connected to the name. Valentine is similar to the German word for fallen. Epilepsy was once known as the falling sickness in the 14th and 15th century because some seizures caused a person to lose consciousness and fall. Still, other legends propose that a 3rd century bishop named Valentine von Terni freed the son of a Roman orator from an epileptic seizure. So in the wake of this Valentine's Day, as the floral-scented hype is passing, we are here talking about epilepsy, and that Valentine's Day is not just a day for lovers, but also a perfect day to create awareness and join hands in fighting epilepsy. And the interesting thing about, you might ask yourself, I've not had epilepsy being on Valentine's Day the years before. That is because epilepsy, as I said in the beginning, is only celebrated on the 2nd Monday of February. And this year, it happens to be on Valentine's Day. So, doctor, what causes Valentine's Day? What causes epilepsy? Is it something that is spread from parent to child, or is it something that I can actually contract from someone who has it?
There are many causes of epilepsy. One, it may be inherited. So the mother or the father or both may have some changes in their genes, especially changes in the genes which control these discharges in the brain. And this may pass to the child. The child may have these genes, and then when this child is born, the child may have epilepsy. Two, sometimes genetic changes can occur in the sperm or in the egg. There is nothing in the family, nobody is known to have epilepsy in the family, but the particular egg or the particular sperm which formed this baby might have had a change, what we call a mutation, and may manifest with epilepsy. Beyond that, and those are mutations which arise, new mutations, and they are actually unimportant. They are much more common than the epilepsies which you inherit from your mother or father. So even if people are to blame, it's usually not that I've married somebody with the family has epilepsy. Usually it is those changes which occur in the egg or the sperm. Now, in some people, it is the development of the brain. You know, when we're in the womb, you come from 1 cell, 2 cells, 4 cells, 8 cells, and then the brain is formed, the limbs are formed. And if something occurs during the development of this baby, and the brain does not develop exactly the way it is, some of the cells which are to connect with each other connect with the wrong neighbors. The information flows to the wrong place. And such entities, such people develop epilepsy. Beyond that, a mother may be expecting a baby. She gets an illness. They have many viral illnesses, some of them like flu. They may pass through the placenta, infect the baby, damage the developing brain, which is very friable. And when the baby is born, the baby may have epilepsy. We also have difficult labor. And this is a big problem. Delays in delivery. The mother is laboring for a long time. The oxygen supply to the brain reduces. And by the time a cesarean section is done, the baby has sustained some injury to the brain. When it heals later on in life, this baby may develop epilepsy. Beyond after birth, infections of the brain, infections which cause meningitis. Some of these germs, the bacteria which we talk about, going to the brain, malaria, cerebral malaria, going to the brain. They may recover with epilepsy. Then we have a lot of road traffic accidents, border injuries, and now we even see on the road these days, there are people who just drive in the opposite direction and they cause road traffic accidents, and you recover with a scar in the head, you develop epilepsy. But
so
also
this
many
is something you can develop even after.
Yes.
When
so
an
many
adult.
of them are after birth. So the infections of the brain, the road traffic accidents, head injuries, stroke. As you go into your 40s, many people have 1 in 4 Ugandan adults has high blood pressure. 1 in 4, and this one predisposes you to stroke, and then you get a brain damage, and the brain heals. You develop epilepsy. Lastly, some people develop even cancers in the brain, and it can bring those abnormalities. So there are a wide variety of causes, but all of them may manifest with the different types of seizures, which I've talked about. And some of them may be localized, so it affects only a part of the body. We say it's focal, or it may affect the whole brain, arise quickly through the bone. We say they are generalized. And then, as I described, you may have convulsions, or you may have absences where you have periods which are short. You may have spasms like the ones of the babies, or you may have myoclonic jerks, or you may have emotional abnormalities which occur.
Well, doctor, let's take a short break. We shall be back to talk about some of the manifestations, as you've explained them, of epilepsy, and what are the causes, and is it curable? Right after this. Good morning and welcome back to Morning at NTV. My name is Idris Matusegawa, and today is Valentine's Day, but also World Epilepsy Day. And we have been talking about some of the causes, some of the manifestations, and how can you tell that your child or your friend or your lover or your family or friend has epilepsy. And I've been talking to Dr. Idro, but we have been joined by Dr. Angelina Kakoza Mwesige. Doctor, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us on this important discussion.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you are a Thrive Fellow, Makerere University.
Yes,
Tell us about Thrive.
Now, Thrive is actually a mnemonic for an organization which trains academia into excellence. Yeah. And this research consortium was funded or was created by Professor Nelson Sewankambo and his colleagues to train researchers into excellence. And this is in East Africa, that is Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. So I happen to be one of their postdoc fellows.
Okay,
Yeah.
Brilliant. Now, we were talking about the causes of epilepsy with Dr. Idro there.
Yes, please.
And he mentioned something that caught my attention.
Yes.
That usually when labor goes on for longer periods,
Yeah.
a child might get damage, brain damage,
Yes.
and maybe probably lack of oxygen supply, etc. I've seen a condition myself where a child has been born and they get something like a wound or a swelling on the brain, and it takes about 2 to 3 months to go down. Does that still cause epilepsy?
What you're trying to describe is what we call, in medical terms, what you can call a hematoma, or something that a swelling whereby blood has collected beneath the surface of the brain.
Yeah.
Now that has happened because at the time of birth, there's been a lot of pressure forces, and there are it's a lot of trauma. It's a very traumatic experience at that time. So as the child tries to make its way through the birth canal, and the mother is also trying to ensure that this takes place, there's a lot of forces that are against each other. And if this is very traumatic, it can actually damage the brain of this child and cause that bleeding. Those small vessels around the brain can bleed and cause that bleeding. Now, to your question, can this cause epilepsy? It all depends. As Dr. Idro had initially explained, that when you get damage to the brain, and later on you may be born where there's no family history, there's no problem whatsoever, the genes are, everything has been fine. But around the time of the birth process, something happened that injured. How far was this injury? If it has gone to such an extent that it has harmed the brain, and this brain then heals with forming a scar, then the possibility is that yes, you can get epilepsy. But sometimes if it is not that severe, the child may survive with minimal injury.
Usually, couples are advised to go and test if they are sickle cell anemic or carriers to prevent having children who probably have sickle cells. Is it the same case with epilepsy? Should couples still go and try and figure that out?
That's a very interesting question, and I'd like to tell you, or I'd like to tell the viewers, that relationships are actually what make us. It's what makes life. And someone may say that, you know, I have got to look and see, does the person have HIV, does the person have sickle cell, or does the person have epilepsy? Really, a condition cannot determine a relationship. If you have love, today we are celebrating Valentine's Day, which is love. Actually, what happened was Saint Valentine married this couple against the orders of the Roman emperor, and he said that, no, I'm going to marry these people. Where love is, no condition should come against that. What I'd like to advise couples is that, of course, you're dating someone and you're not sure, you're not yet open with that person. You don't know how the person will react if I say that I have epilepsy, because many of the times there's misunderstanding and there's a lot of ignorance amongst the people. When you talk about epilepsy, they're saying demons or someone is cursed or something like that.
Dear.
So when you're starting a relationship, you first have to gauge and see how familiar is this person regarding this condition. Can this person accept me? Because people with epilepsy get rejected. Just like someone can reject you because your ears are small, or your nose is big, or your mouth is something weird like that. So we should not let epilepsy as a condition determine whether you go ahead or not. Have your relationship, gauge in terms of the stage of your relationship. Is it actually getting serious? Can you open up to this person regarding what epilepsy is? If the person can accept you as you are. I've seen couples actually coming, and the husband says, I told my wife to take her medication. In fact, I keep reminding her. That is love. Because they care for each other.
True.
Without epilepsy or with epilepsy, it is the love you have for the person. Are you going to take care of this person? Yes, the drugs of epilepsy can cause problems. For example, in men, it can affect your libido, it can affect your mood. But talk with your neurologist and see, can you change another drug to see that what can help you. But let not epilepsy affect your relationship.
Be a decider for your relationship.
No. It shouldn't.
Well said, Dr. Angelina, sorry. And I'll come to you, Dr. Idro. You've talked about the symptoms, the manifestations of epilepsy. How mild are the symptoms, and can it be tested if probably I'm not so aware of the symptoms and how I can tell that this person has epilepsy? Is it testable?
So the decision in our settings in a clinic, we say a person has epilepsy if this person has had 2 or more of these attacks. And especially if these attacks were not provoked. You are not having a fever and then you get a convulsion. 1 month later, again, a child is playing, or an adult, you are sitting with your friends, you're watching football, and then you get an attack. It has occurred on 2 occasions, out of the blue, unprovoked. We say you have epilepsy. And our decision of making a diagnosis of epilepsy is actually based on such history. And we spend quite a bit of time, we ask the people who have witnessed it, especially people who get the big ones, the convulsions, what they see. Because the person with epilepsy, unless it is the focal one, which affects one part of the body, they may not remember, they may not know what happened. All that they are told is that they fell down, they were jerking, some of them, they might have passed susu on themselves, or they were frothing from the mouth. They may not know. So it is the eyewitness account. And sometimes we ask if, especially for people who have seen it once or twice, it is a scary thing. But if you could take your phone and you record it, we observe those things. Now, we do not have a test to say that this test says now you have epilepsy. No, but we have some tests which help us. And these health tests help us to classify the type of epilepsy, because the treatments which we give for epilepsy is partly dependent on the type. So, for example, there's a test called EEG, and we put some leads, some wires on the scalp, and this is connected to a computer screen, and it takes the recordings of the brain waves, the electrical activity of the brain. Sometimes we ask you to go for a scan, a CT scan, a brain MRI. It takes pictures of your brain, and if there is a structural abnormality, it's able to see those. But the diagnosis is based on the history of the description of the events. And if you have had at least 2 or more events, we usually say that you have epilepsy.
Well, I'll come to Dr. Angelina.
Yes.
You talked about couples helping each other taking medicine.
Yes.
Is epilepsy curable?
I would say yes and no. Why do I say yes? If you say that is epilepsy curable, we've now got to know that there are certain types of epilepsy which a patient can have, especially with children. Both of us take care of children with epilepsy. The child outgrows their epilepsy. After a period of 1 to 2 years, the child is no longer having the epileptic attacks. The child is well controlled, has no more neurological findings, no family history, nothing to suggest what caused that epilepsy in the first place. We say then that child's epilepsy has gone, it's more or less like has been cured. Then there are those that you can say it is not curable. And when I talk about it's not curable, it's that we try to control it with medications. Dr. Idro talked about road traffic accidents. Here we are, we're all of us using borders because there's a lot of traffic jam.
Yeah.
And we forget that sometimes we have to have helmets. I'm also a culprit. Sometimes I'm on those borders without a helmet. You have had damage to your brain and there is a scar. We give you medications to try to control your seizures so that your epileptic attacks don't come as often. So you may feel that you're actually controlled, you're no longer having the epileptic attacks, but I cannot call you that you're cured because that scar remains. Not only until probably if you go for surgery and they remove that area and you get complete, some surgery can make you completely free of those attacks depending on how well it has been done.
Yeah.
So is epilepsy curable? The answer is depends. Yeah.
Depends on so many factors.
Depends on so many factors, yes.
Oh, wow.
But we cannot say like how you say, I have gotten malaria, I've taken attenuate or quinine, and I'm cured. With epilepsy, it has a lot of other connotations behind it.
Like what?
Well, as he has mentioned, you may have a genetic tendency. For example, my great-grandfather had epilepsy. And this gene has gone through my father to me. I will have epilepsy because it's me and I've gotten my genes from my father. Yeah. I cannot go out and remove my genes. It is me. I'm Angelina, the child of Mr. Kakoza, and that's it. So if I have those genes, there is no way that I can undo the genes. So I'll have epilepsy for life, and that is me. You take me as I am, or you leave it. If I have an injury, as I've mentioned, there is no way that I can undo that injury. If I have been born, and unfortunately my mother, during the time of birth, had complications, and I was born with this swelling in the head probably, which damaged my brain is damaged, I cannot go back in my mother's womb and get a new brain. True. So I can get better. But if I have an epilepsy, whose cause is probably not known, they examine me, they find my neurological exam is okay, they find that when I get medications, I'm actually responsive to the treatment. After 2 years, I am seizure-free. High chances that you're actually going to get better.
As we wind up this conversation, I'm going to go to Dr. Idro. Today is World Epilepsy Day. What are some of the things that people should know about this disease?
So, one, that you cannot contract epilepsy from somebody by touching a person with epilepsy. We have many of these myths in our community. A person falls down, is fitting, is foaming, people jump through the windows
and running.
That if that saliva touches you, you get epilepsy. We, just as we said, it is an abnormal discharge inside that person's brain. You're not about to touch that brain, and it flows within that person's brain. It's not going to pass to your brain. You do not contract epilepsy like that. Two, people with epilepsy can just live normal lives, just like the rest of us. And anybody who has a brain actually can get epilepsy. So long as you are alive, you have a brain, we can all get epilepsy. In any one community, at least 1%. Dr. Angelina has conducted these studies in Igangama, Uganda. 1% of the population has epilepsy. But in fact, in some parts of the country, up to 2% of the. So if for 45 million people, the minimum we have in Uganda is 450,000. But if we use the 2%, it is almost 900,000 people in this country who have epilepsy. So it's a very common thing. So let people live their lives. For children, let them play. Let them
don't restrict.
Not unnecessary restriction. Except we say if they're going to swim, let there be somebody who knows.
Who's looking out for them.
Yes. Yeah, let them not climb heights in case something like that happens. If I am an adult and I drive vehicles and I'm getting attacks, I should not drive. At least I should be on medications and my symptoms should have been controlled for at least 1 year.
Brilliant.
I should not have had these attacks. If the attack happens, like here, I have epilepsy, I fall down, what you need to do is to move these things away so that I do not injure myself. Do not try to restrain me. You can cause damage. Do not try to put things in my mouth because I can push the tongue backwards. I can choke.
That's one thing
Yes.
that I thought
Yes.
we are supposed to do.
No, that is dangerous.
It's
In
wrong.
fact, you can even break the tooth and it enters inside. You have a bigger problem. We need to educate ourselves, and if we can educate ourselves, those with epilepsy need to take medications. The medications need to be taken daily. These attacks can be suppressed. It can be suppressed so much so that in up to 70% of them, the attacks cease
To
they
manifest.
cease. In fact, in a number of them, slowly, and then we withdraw the medications, just as Dr. Kakoza has described. But in some of them, they may be on medications for life. Yes.
Well said. Dr. Angela Kakoza,
Yes.
because we have run out of time, in 30 seconds, is anything going to happen for this day? Any event, anything our viewers can be a part of?
Well, there are many activities that are going round. My colleague, Dr. Idro, is going to have a webinar, which is for us doctors, but even the public is free for that. Epilepsy Support Association Uganda is also holding a session in the Ministry of Health, where we're trying to raise awareness. Excuse me. This is a day in which we try to raise awareness for epilepsy, and the theme this year is friendship and inclusion. Many times people with epilepsy are not included. They are either left aside. So since we're celebrating Valentine's Day, and I'm very happy that NTV has blessed us with a rose. This is the first rose I've got for Valentine.
Wow.
And I really thank you very much for it. We want to include, please include people with epilepsy in your lives. Be friends with someone with epilepsy. If you find someone who has epilepsy, show them love. That's what I want to tell the people. The
Well
viewers.
said, doctors.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming through and having this very important discussion, and I hope people can be part of this webinar to kind of understand how to help people with epilepsy, because amazingly, I thought when someone gets an attack, you're supposed to put something in their tongue, and it's wrong. Well, if you want to catch up with the conversation that we've been having, go to our YouTube channel, that is NTV Uganda, and this conversation will be uploaded there. You'll be able to watch and understand some of the things the doctors have been talking about. And also, if you have had an experience with epilepsy and you want to share it, go to our social media platforms, that is Facebook and Twitter. Look out for NTV Uganda or myself, Idris Matusegawa, and tell us your experience. Remember, sharing is very important, because that's when you create awareness about an issue. When you keep it quiet, you're not helping anyone.